Um, Today we have Kent Forney as an attorney with the law firm Bradshaw, Fowler, Proctor, and Fairgrave down in Des Moines. And Kent is agreed to come on and talk to us today about annual meetings. We've all got them coming up, hopefully, if you haven't already done it. Obviously, in today's environment, may not be able to do it face to face. And Kent has put together some information for us on how we can possibly do that virtually. And then also a little bit around the do's and don'ts around social media and talking with our insured and our customers that way. So I'll go ahead and Kent, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Brian. I understand that everybody has a concern about how to hold a virtual meeting. And let me start off by talking a little bit about, we need to understand, or we need a definition of virtual meeting, because there really isn't one. But for our purposes, I think it's generally understood to mean a situation where the members are not all in the same room, the same physical location. So if you're going to define it, excuse me, first place, at least as a lawyer, I'd look would be for the applicable law. See if there's any law about annual meetings and virtual meetings, so on and so forth. Chapter 491 of the Iowa Code is the law under which all the mutuals are organized. That includes both the county, the state, and the larger Iowa mutuals like IMT or Grinnell or EMC. And unfortunately, that is an ancient statute. It was codified in 1913, but it has roots back before that, because those of you that were organized in the 1880s were organized under the forerunner of this, so that's how old it is. Anyway, that is a chapter that was designed for ordinary business corporation stockholders. 491 never uses the words member, policyholder, or anything. So that really doesn't give us any information about how to hold a meeting or what a virtual meeting is. I suppose the next logical place to look is at 518, 518A, the license that the statute chapters, that you're licensed under. It is also silent on annual meetings, but 518A does, interesting, allow you to adjourn one. But that's all it says about it. Next place you might look, articles of incorporation and bylaws. Some of you are more recent than others, but most of them come closest to talking about virtual meetings or meetings by using phrases like members present at a meeting or every member present at a meeting. However, they don't define what present means. Does it assume some physical location, or does it mean you are present as a participant, even if you're at a remote site, but able to participate? Frankly, I think you can read it either way. It's ambiguous. Also, in some relevance, the governor by proclamation has suspended requirements for, quote, face-to-face meetings that are found, she says, in chapters 491. And then I had them add 518 and 518A to the proclamation. However, as I pointed out before, these chapters don't specify face-to-face meetings. So when the proclamation says it's going to suspend the requirement for face-to-face meetings, there aren't any to suspend. So this kind of leaves you in the vernacular, kind of up the proverbial creek without proper means of locomotion, or down Alice's rabbit hole. There's got to be some answer to this. I think this is the best I can come up with, and it's far from a legal certainty, but the better view would be that present includes both physical presence and remote participation. In looking at it from a pragmatic point of view, question could be academic. The only critical issue at most annual meetings is the election of board members. And that's usually uncontested. You're reelected or you elected. Let's say somebody claimed that you had a virtual meeting and somebody claimed that it was illegal. What are the consequences? Well, Director Jones is no longer a member of the board, was illegally elected. So then what happens? Well, the board has the power to fill vacancies. So the board turns around and elects Jones to his term. That may be the best answer from a pragmatic point of view if somebody's going to challenge a virtual meeting. Another alternative would be for the board right now, immediately before the annual meeting, to adopt a bylaw, which you can do. And in that bylaw, provide for a virtual meeting via a conference call or Zoom or whatever, some other electronic or internet device. So those are your best alternatives. As a matter of cold comfort, the Bar Association is sponsoring a bill in this session of the legislature to amend chapters 491, 518, 518A that will specifically authorize virtual meetings, which would really solve the problem. Wouldn't be any question after that. However, that won't become effective until July 4th of this year. So going back kind of where we started, I think the best solution for a virtual meeting is in the notice of the annual meeting, you include a conference call number they can call in on, or give them a Zoom meeting number where they can plug into it and allow them to call in. And I think those are your best alternatives and the best way to hold a virtual meeting. So anybody got any questions or comments or something? Be happy to try to go further if I can.
Keep in mind you are on mute, so please unmute yourself if you have a question, or once again, you can always type it in the chat room and I'd be glad to pose that to Kent for us. I'm not seeing any questions, Kent, so I'd say go right ahead.
All right. Well, and the other issue you left with me was social media and reporting claim information on social media. The bottom line of that's a no-no. The social media, of course, is open. Anybody can get at it. Excuse me. Also, the platform owners, I'm not an expert on this, but the platform owners might have something to say about it. I'm not sure what that would be, but if I was going to use social media, that's something I'd be concerned about. Also, there is a qualified privilege in the code in connection with litigation for information furnished by an indemnitor or an insurance company. So if you get to swapping information back and forth, you have waived that privilege. So that if you get sued, the insurance lawyer or whoever can get all of that communication back and forth. So the bottom line is don't let them use social media. Either use email, which you can protect, assume you have it protected, or, Uncle Sam in the post office. But that's the best rule on that, is just don't use it. If they try to use it, tell them no, ask them to give you the information another way. Well, there's one other real no-no, and you don't usually, well, some of you are agents, so you're writing other coverages, so you might bump into this. Medical information. That's absolutely verboten. Never should that be on a social media platform. And so if you have a claim file there's some personal injury information and medical reports, anything of that sort, medical history. That's absolute, that's a federal crime. Put that on social media. That has to be protected. Let's say most on the property side, you don't run into those problems. But the extent your agents and you're writing some other line, you could run into them. Anyhow, that one's easy. That's just a no-no. Anybody got any questions or comments?
I
Kent,
think-
on the legislation that you mentioned, the Bar Association was bringing in, does that include 515s as well?
No. And I don't think, Bruce, I haven't seen the final version.
Okay.
Um,
Any specific reason or feeling on why they're excluded?
Hang on a second. I'm looking at what I can find. I don't see this, and I wonder. I'm still going back and forth with the chairman of the bar committee, corporate law committee, and there's no reason why that shouldn't be in 515 as well, because they originally suggested amending 491, which we operate on, and they would be incorporated by reference. The virtual meeting would be put into 490 by an amendment. I saw that and I said, hey guys, add 518 and 518A. So they said, okay, fine. So you're going to have a belt and suspenders in this situation because the same first provision will be in 491, 518, 518A. But 515, I don't see. That's a good point. Let me do this, Bruce. I'm going to get a hold of Bill Boyd, who's the chair of that committee, and ask him if they have some other proposal, maybe that's a separate one they're making on 515. And if not, why not?
Sure. Well, my point there, Ken, was that we all do business with 515s because of our statute here in Iowa.
Yeah,
It just makes sense that 515 would be included as well.
it does. And as I say, I think that's just, maybe I have folks making them, I've been on their back about this for a while. Maybe I was making them focus too much on our problem and not thinking about 515. So in any event, thanks for the question. I'll get a hold of Bill Boyd and raise the issue.
Okay.
Anybody else got any questions or comments?
Kent, would you mind repeating what our obligations would be as far as making notification to the members of the virtual meeting?
Sure.
They've been notified in their policy that it takes place here on such and such a day, but if we're going to change that to a virtual meeting, how would the proper way to go about that be? I think you said it and I missed it.
No, I was afraid somebody was going to come up with that because a lot of you, or some of you do, I know, have the notice only in the jacket of the policy. You don't send a separate notice for the annual meeting. This year, if you're going to have a virtual meeting, you're going to have to send a separate notice. And that can be as simple as a postcard to the members, as I said before, giving them a conference call-in number, or a Zoom meeting number they can use. But you're going to have to do something separate than whatever's in the policy jacket.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Does the idea that I proposed about just amending your bylaws make any sense to anybody. Now, ultimately, you will get a break when the new law comes in. But if you did it right now, you'd solve your problem, or any question, I should say, about your annual meeting. But it's a question of, well, let me back up. If you have an issue in your annual meeting that the policyholders are really going to have to vote on, some real governance issue like merger or dissolution or something substantial, then the virtual meeting question becomes, or its correctness or propriety becomes a little bigger issue. As I said, if you're just reelecting directors, if they say it's illegal, we'll just fill it, or elect the appointee to fill the vacancy, and that gets you right back to square one again. So if there is any question about it, you might think about using that device to just quickly amending your bylaws and spelling out a virtual meeting.
Kent, I have already sent out my notification to the members and provided them with a conference call number.
Okay.
Do you recommend that as sufficient, or do you recommend also a change in the bylaws?
I think I would not bother changing the bylaws. I think you're all right. This, again, we're kind of in an unplowed area. Because candidly, when a lot of the provisions we're working with were adopted, Alexander Graham Bell was still trying to get a patent. So we're that far out of date. So I think it's a question of how nervous are you? I think you're all right with a postcard and a conference call. And again, as I said, if all you're doing is reelecting directors, I don't know, I wouldn't sweat it. But on the other hand, if you really want to be sure and where you are and what you're doing, then do a quick amendment to your bylaws.
All right, thank you. I have one other question on social media, if I might.
Yeah.
Do you recommend any type of correspondence on social media regarding any type of policy change for insurance purposes? Or basically stay away from social media altogether?
That would be the most conservative position. Because once you get it on social media, you've lost control. Who knows where it goes? Who may do something with it? That all that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Kent, I have a quick question.
Sure.
On our announcement in the paper for our annual meeting, would it be possible, instead of listing the numbers for a conference call, could we tell them it will be offered as a virtual meeting and to contact our office for that information before the meeting?
Yeah. That's a close call. Let me put it that way.
I know.
Yeah. You don't want to go to the trouble of sending out all the postcards.
Well,
Correct.
we posted in the paper, so I haven't gotten anything in there, but I would put it in my ad with the paper from what you had said earlier.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I think that's as good as anything at the moment. And what are you going to have in your annual meeting? Anything other than electing directors?
No, not this
No.
year.
So from a pragmatic point of view, I said before, if something happens, they kick a director off, that creates a vacancy. The board can fill the vacancy, so you're right back to square one.
Mhm.
Well, that's a pragmatic answer anyway.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Kent, Randy Druving, a question that, on our annual meeting in the years that I've been manager, we've never had anyone show up. So
Yes.
if we would, would it be sufficient if we did go virtual to have somebody at the office that only notified those that did show up.
Say that again, Randy.
No one shows up for the annual meeting other than some staff and board members. We have not had
Yeah.
policy holders for.
Just enough to get a quorum. Yeah.
So doesn't it somewhat become a moot point? And we notify in our policy jackets and in mailings, notice of our annual meeting. So isn't it really kind of a moot point to notify all those people that are not going to come anyway?
Well, that's always a question. And you can take the position, I mean, excuse me, there are no requirements specifically for an annual meeting, as we talked before, other than what you've got in your articles and your bylaws. And so if you can use your usual pattern and get a quorum, you may be all right, because there's no requirement to hold a virtual meeting. It's been everybody's talk of it. It's kind of the, it's the new thing to do virtual. And so it's gained a lot of popularity, but there isn't any requirement in the code for attendance or presence at an annual meeting, except the one that says you got to have one more member there than there are directors. And that's the only time when presence comes. Let's assume you've got 10 directors, so you got to have 11 members at the meeting. And 4 or 5 of them say, I'm afraid of the virus. I don't want to come to the meeting. Then you've got a virtual meeting problem. But if they all show up, they're all present in one location plus one more, then you've probably still got a legal meeting.
Super, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Are there any
Anybody
other
else?
questions for Ken at this time?
Kent, this is John Paul. In 2017, you assisted us with mentioning not just snail mail, but going to electronic communication to communicate with the board and so forth.
Yeah.
I'm just curious why you didn't think about virtual meetings in 2017.
That's a hell of a good question, John, and only you would ask it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Frankly, I did not think of it. I was happy when we finally got everybody to accept conference calls. That's been a struggle for years. And I was not techie, I guess, in 2017 to think much about a virtual meeting. And of course, nobody anticipated the virus. In my defense, I'll say that. And that's what really brought the whole virtual meeting thing to a head. But you're right, maybe I should have had a better crystal ball. Anybody else want to gig me about something?
How's your fishing?
Well, if it wasn't for the virus, I didn't get to go this summer.
Oh,
But the interesting thing about that, Bruce, I've been going to this Eskimo village about 350 miles out of Anchorage. And I was talking to about maybe 20 white people in the village and about 400 Eskimos and Indians. And I was talking to one of the white guys up. He called me that he wished me Merry Christmas. And he announced he has been vaccinated. And so is his wife. And everybody in the village was vaccinated in December. So that'll tell you something about how vaccine gets distributed around this country. So maybe it helps because the Indians are all wards of the federal government. So maybe that's how they got it first.
interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Does anybody have any further questions for Ken at this time? Well, I'm not hearing any or seeing any, so in due respect to everybody's time, we'll go ahead and call this to a close. I'd like to thank Kent for taking the time to update us on this topic and shed his information to our group. And also just to remind the group that next Wednesday, we'll have Daniel Mathis on. He'll be talking to us about the changes to our annual statements for our 518, 518A companies. So you want to stay tuned for that. And then on February 10th, we'll have Dan England. He'll be talking to us about drones and drone usage from First Maxfield side. So look forward to that. And those invites will be coming out. So look for those in your inbox. Other than that, I will say thank you to all you for showing up today and have a good rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, Kent. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kent.
Thank you, Kent.
Thanks, Kent. Everyone have a good afternoon.
You too. Bye.